Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning. This is your host, Llorraine Neithardt, and this is Venus Unplugged, your virtual heartbreak hotel. And what we do here is we explore psyche, soul, the ways of Venus. In the last few weeks, we've been working on Snow White, this initiatory fairy tale about a young girl's initiation into her wholeness, being a woman. She's being initiated by the Great Mother, but the dark side of the Great Mother. So the Great Mother has a golden and positive side and a dark side, as do all archetypes. And just as a little recap, at 7 years old, all right, now 7 keeps on playing out, this number keeps on playing out in this story. One of the things that's very interesting to me about fairy tales, and every fairy tale you can interpret so many different ways and it be absolutely spot on. And there's never any mention of God per se. There's the Great Mother, and she comes up, but it's nothing religious. It's something very, very here. Everything in a fairy tale has a meaning, has a purpose, has a pathology, and it's our job to see how that relates to us. But it's also the job of the hero or the heroine to start figuring things out. And usually, particularly in Snow White's case, she is definitely some kind of innocent, holy fool, because she keeps on falling for it. And you start to wonder why. Or you wonder, what about the Snow White within, the one who's so innocent that it's actually dangerous? Because we need a little street. We need a little knowledge of shadow and light in order to make an informed move or possibility. And that's why the teachings of the Dark Mother, she comes in. I mean, she's not into destroying us. She's just into, like, hey, are you strong enough to be whole? It's one of the greatest tricks, I suppose, or pathologies, is resistance. How much we resist. It's the Lenten season, or it's also the pagan season of light and transformation and coming up from the underworld and the equinoxes and all that. And this period of time, every year for 40 days, I give up resistance. And it's always amazing to me, because I don't see myself as a particularly resistant person until you give it up. And then you see all the little things that you've been doing that actually have no rhyme or reason. They're working against you, and yet you have resistance. So the first thing I did in preparation for this 40 days of giving up resistance, I took all my little projects and piled them all. It actually wound up being almost a whole wall. All little things that I didn't do, I didn't get to do, or was going to get around to doing. Okay, my kind of crafts and my art stuff and all of that, organizational stuff, papers, yada, yada, yada. I put them all there, and that's my wall of resistance. And when you put it all together, either in thought or deed, you got a lot of resistance in our lives. And resistance says, oh, go back to sleep today, or, oh, don't write your dreams down. You don't know what they mean anyway. Or whatever our resistance might be. Don't try. Somebody else will be better. And one of the things with Snow White, which is so fascinating, I mean, this witch keeps on coming at her. I mean, last week it was, the poison stays, and she tied her up tight with these stays, which I guess is kind of like a corset, and disconnected her from her air, took her breath away. Thank God the dwarfs came, who keep on warning Snow White, Do not listen to her. This is not going to fare well. But she doesn't, and she keeps on falling for this. So there's, when we keep on falling for something, the question is, what's in it, or what are we into it, or what is the fantasy or the impulse? Sometimes we do the wrong thing that winds up being the right thing. Such is the way of fairy tales, and such is the way of life. So Snow White, as we're starting to understand, see the terrible mother, which is what the Great Mother is called, okay, one aspect there, though the Great Mother is the most feared when she shows her purely destructive side. When, as in Snow White, she becomes the terrible mother as the stepmother in that mirror. And when this trait is uppermost, she often appears in fairy tales in the role of the evil stepmother, representing the annihilating side of the maternal principle. This dark urge is to destroy as much a part of the archetype of the mother as it is light and its life-giving side. So there's no way of you cannot get away from shadow and light. You can repress it, but if you don't know its pathology, you don't know which is which, because it's very tricky. It can tell you, it can guide you right to hell, and you don't even know. So part of the feminine, part of Snow White's journey, and the anima in men, this is a story of a woman's initiation, but the same is true internally for a male. It's about becoming aware. Okay? A woman may at times have to live out her dark side of motherhood. If she does it consciously, which is always the trick, doing it consciously, it can have the purpose of freeing her from unconscious destructive sides. So, in my case, I'm looking at resistance. It's like, wow, actually, why am I resisting that? I'm going to feel better by doing it, and then it frees me up to be more creative. And yet, what's with this resistance? So we start to discover that resistance isn't really protecting us. So here we have it. Snow White is with the dwarfs, and the dwarfs we're realizing are in aspects of the divine. They're like little gods, and they're not human. They do not marry. There's male and female dwarfs, but they don't marry. They don't have children. All right, so they don't multiply. They are who they are. So they represent aspects in our psyche, in our unconscious, that are indwelling. They mine that's their toil every day. Every day they toil at their gifts, which is to find gold and copper. Gold is the symbol of individuation, which means wholeness, and copper is the metal of Venus. So those are the two things they're working with. That's what they have the specialty to do. All right. But they, too, they live in their little world. So they don't really know anything about a young girl. Now, once again, Snow White starts off on this journey with the stepmother after her. She wants the husband to kill her. And but at 7, it is said that a child begins to learn the difference between good and evil. I don't think it's like they know, like, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't have done that. So that's interesting. So she begins where she's starting to realize, like, holy moly, I better get away from this queen, even though the queen, the stepmother, banishes her. She starts to realize she's really in trouble, but she doesn't resist. It's the one time she begs for her life, and then she runs over hill and dale and 7 mountains and finds the dwarfs, and here she's asked to, she's got to work. She's got to pay for her bidding, but they do want to protect her. The same thing happens to us in life. So so on coming to the dwarf, Snow White experiences a world of different dimensions. These tiny little people, very consistent in what they do, okay? And this is very common when we become in touch with this world, this language in psyche or the depths of the unconscious, that this is a common experience when we come into contact with deeper levels of the unconscious, and it's a serious conflict, like with Snow White. If followed through honestly, we can bring a person into contact with deeper levels of the psyche, in which time the place becomes relative. So, what does that mean? We need to do the work every day. If you have a dream, write it down. You don't have to know what it means. Okay, if the dream frightens you, or if you're dreaming and then dreaming cease for a while, the dream does not cease because we would perish. I think there was an experiment, I don't remember if was it with cats? And they stopped them from dreaming for like 7 weeks, and the animal will die, because it's a very important part of psychic health, dreaming and using our imagination. It's far greater than we could ever imagine. So if we're dreaming and we're remembering, cool, we're writing it down, and then we go through a period where we're not, that is psyche balancing herself. Okay, she is not she's not the evil queen. She wants your wholeness, everyone's. But she knows it would be too much to bring up too much contents from like the dwarfs going in. You're not bringing up too much goals, not bringing up too much consciousness, or too much love or feeling or desire too quickly. We get overwhelmed. Same thing happens with the unconscious. Or look what happens when you get a crush on somebody, or you fall in love. You are overwhelmed with those experiences that you have living inside of you. And most people try to shut them down as quickly as possible, because we don't know how to tolerate the tension. All right, so Snow White's allowed to stay with the dwarfs, and she does the housework, and she must work hard for these spirits, as we all do. So she can't just sit around doing nothing. Similarly, a woman in an emotional conflict can find some relief, at least temporarily, in dedicating work that serves added purpose of cleaning up her psychic house. So for Lent, I'm cleaning out my house of resistance that I forgot all about. I always know it's there, and so next 40 days it gets tackled, and hopefully the rest of my life. But okay, so that's what Snow White's up to, and so she finds refuge from her persecutor, but not for long, because as we know last week, the evil stepmother learns through her magic mirror that she is still alive and where she is staying. And she tries to several subtle methods to get Snow White and to kill her. I mean, I don't know, choking somebody to death is so subtle, but so her methods are typical for a witch. She dresses as a peddler, and she sells Snow White laces and laces her up so tightly that she suffocates. She literally cuts her off from her air supply with the laces. In symbolic terms, air means the spiritual sphere. When the stepmother cuts off the girl's hair, well, not her hair, her air. They're close, though, I just realized that. She cuts off her from her spiritual attitude. In real life, this points to the confinement experience when we only take account of concrete reality. No, this is what happened. And we tell the story. Or we scapegoat somebody and have them carry our shadow, that they're all bad and you're so innocent and this is what they did. All right? Well, that's part of cutting off the air. That's part of cutting off the consciousness. It's like, when you tell yourself the story, you because every aspect of every fairy tale is an aspect within yourself. So when you're trying to work something out, remember, Psyche's intention is to bring you to wholeness. She doesn't care if you're happy or not. Happiness is not wholeness. Wholeness is wholeness, where we can see the shadow and light. We can see what we're up to. We can see when we want somebody to carry our golden part of our shadow. They're so great, and you're just a mere mortal that has no talent, and you give all your gold to another person or a situation or a belief system. Instead of saying, no, I need that for myself. It's balancing it. So here we have it. So when the queen fails in this attempt at murder, thanks to the timely intervention of the dwarfs, all right, so the dwarfs within give us an insight. They come, they release us, they connect us again. She then tries again with a poison comb. And finally, she disguises herself as a farmer's wife with a poison apple. Poison is traditionally a woman's weapon, both concretely and psychologically. Men usually attack their enemies openly through their animas and although their animas can sometimes be poisonous. In fairy tales, poison is mostly used by witches, by the female shadow, in other words. Its effects are invisible and insidious. Gossip, form of poison. It's, well, that person, yeah. Well, but if you knew what the true story was, don't believe everything you hear. Check that stuff out. Don't take the poison of someone else is setting about, unless you know that they're wise, unless you know that there is some level of wholeness in them. Or the poison that we tell ourselves. We poison ourselves every single day by the stories that we tell ourselves. Oh, somebody's so much greater than that. Oh, the world doesn't need another ice skater or dancer or whatever. Those are poisonous. If that's your truth, and that's what you feel. Now remember, particularly now, whatever you're resisting, that's your greatest fear, and that's what you have to do next. Which is interesting in terms of Snow White, because she keeps on one level, it's like, Snow White, would you wake up? This is dangerous. And yet, she takes on each one of these murder attempts on her. So what is she getting? On some level, she knows something that may not be conscious. She may know that she's got to go these experiences of being disconnected from spirit and being poisoned and a hair comb. Hair is always fantasies. And you see it all the time in everyday life. Mothers or stepmothers or other women will go after women's hair. Now, girl, you should do something with your hair. Why don't you fix your hair? It's like, leave their hair alone. I knew when my mother's witch was up, because she would go after my hair. It's like, it's my hair. Like, leave it. I don't know what it wants to do. I've never been a big hair person anyway. I don't get crazy about it. I take care of it and treat it well. Once it treats me well, I'm thrilled that it's on top of my head, not on my chin. But it's lovely, and it wants to do what it wants to do. But the negative mother, when it goes after somebody's hair or a comment on the hair, that is the person's witch. So a comb is used to tidy up one's hair. And hair generally means unconscious thoughts and fantasies. Some of one's thoughts are neatly arranged inside one's head, and there's others that cannot be controlled. But there are others that is so far away from the conscious that they're hardly conscious of, often symbolized in unruly hair. But it needs to be there because there's gold in those fantasies, meaning there's consciousness. You need to be aware of something. You need to be aware when the witch has a hold of you or she's just poisoned your mind against yourself. All right. So we can have these thoughts that we're hardly conscious of, symbolized by the hair. And it grows from the head, playing around, like Medusa. Remember the one with the snake hair? She was a piece of work. Okay. Absolute poster girl for envy. So the poisoning of Snow White through the hair could imply harming oneself through unconscious poisonous thoughts and notions which kill the genuine emotions. And a man, too, can foster thoughts against his emotion. And that's what comes from the negative anima. And he doesn't even know that's going on. All right? It's very tricky. If he doesn't know there's an inner feminine, not a girl, a feminine, a divinity, a goddess, both the divine loving goddess, feminine, and also the holy witch, whose intention, by hook or crook, is to get us to wake up. So one thing that I find so fascinating, it's like, why is Snow White unable to make use of the warnings and the concern for her safety? Well, certainly I can understand the concern for her safety. Nobody ever protected her. So if nobody ever protected you, you wouldn't have that instinct inside of you. You would just walk into anything. No one said, hey, man, that is so not cool. You can get hurt. I see it with my clients. They'll tell me a story and say, were you aware of how dangerous that was to your heart and soul? And they just look at me like Snow White, innocent. No. Nobody told me that could backfire. It's like, well, okay, then I'm going to be telling you. See, the glorious thing about the journey of individuation or wholeness, it doesn't end. It gets deeper and more refined and more interesting and more intense. And then you actually become somewhat of an antenna of experience so other people can see what wholeness looks like. It doesn't come in a creed. It doesn't come in a how-to book. It doesn't come that way. It comes as the art of a human being. We are potentially living works of art with everything, and beauty and form and nobility and moral, not restricted, but what is, our moral compass. So this is part of what these fairy tales talk about. How do we serve Venus? So then we've got this hair comb. All right, this beautiful, beautiful hair comb. So what is it about? She doesn't listen. It's like it's exasperating. So the queen has to be offering Snow White something deep in the unconscious that's more tempting than the kind of little conflict-free life if she lives with the 7 dwarfs. So Snow White is tempted and falls through the forces through her own desire. She needs to develop a living relationship to the feminine, which is beyond the world of the dwarfs, because she is living a life that is too small as they say, living your life too small for your shoes, because I like that one because I'm a shoemaker. And developing her nature. So the Dark Queen is able to tempt her with symbols for a fuller life beyond the little cottage. Cottage. And maybe before a little college. Sometimes life is the most important. I probably learned more in travels. One of my great dreams was to become an airline stewardess. So before I was old enough to do that, one of my first jobs was I worked in a reservation, so I could in an airline, so I could travel on the weekend. So all my friends were going getting drunk on the east side. I'd be traveling, terrified the whole way, absolutely terrified. I was by myself. I didn't know another language. What was I doing? But I was not going to not go. I knew something. And I knew I had the capacity to observe, so I would just observe other people, their customs, and, of course, be polite, but be aware. So, and I knew if I didn't do that, I was never going to enter life, because the life that I incarnated into didn't exactly have travelers. They were just busy struggling with everyday life. So at 17, I ventured out. Obviously, the gods were protecting me, kind of like Snow White, putting myself in the middle of countries where I couldn't speak the language or anything, but I was going to do it. Fear or no fear. So sometimes we do things and we don't know the language, but we're going to do it because something was moving inside of me that knew I would grow. And I wanted that. Always wanted that. So that was a gift that I was given. I know I was a scrambled egg, and I wanted to unscramble it. And I'm still unscrambling it. And the joy and the beauty and the terror of it all. But my deepest feeling, and this is just my sharing my inner fantasy, is that when we leave this planet and we meet with the lords of karma, and they say, so how'd you do? I mean, they're not going to ask you, well, did you save the world? Or, they're not going to ask you any of that. How did you do? I want to be able to say, that, okay, my soul's got a couple of boo-boos on it, but I didn't let it get, you gave me something so precious to tend to, holier than holy, and I didn't let it get destroyed or wounded too badly or look like something a dog chewed up. Now, that's my personal image. Because when we're given something so precious of our soul and our life, we're not going to let this witch get in the way. So next week, what do we deal with? The poison apple. Now, the reason Snow White is allowing this unconsciously, okay, she's not conscious of it yet, is she knows it's going to take her to some other awareness. Because this is still, it's closer to consciousness. But there we go. So we won't complete the whole myth. We're getting close, though, fairy tale. So the poison apple. So give up your resistance. See where it lies. Because behind that resistance is your greatest fear, which is your next step. So go on LorraineNeithardt.com. And I shared with you that I'm in a book, 100 of America's Top Psychics, and how that was I think, yeah, it's out on print now. It should be at Amazon, and it should be on 100 of America's Top Psychics.com. And email me and call me. And next week, the poison apple. Bye-bye.